In session 2 of chapter 2, we will take on the service qualitative requirement and the acceptance of necessity as the second and the third step of the procurement procedure we saw in session 1. SQRs are possibly the most important thing in the procurement process. Any errors in SQR will manifest itself both in the provision of equipment for the purpose of the trials and the trials itself. SQR provides the vendor the operational, technical, maintainability and agronomic parameters in which they have to provide to the equipment. And the service headquarter works out a trial directive based on the SQRs to be able to be tried. Therefore, SQRs have to be realistic. They have to be achievable. They have to be verifiable by the trials concerned and should avoid ambiguity of any time. For example, a SQR saying that a night vision device should provide appropriate visibility in night conditions would be totally ambiguous. What type of visibility and what type of darkness conditions? Now, SQRs are formulated by the Directorate of the Service Headquarter concerns. Inputs are taken from the RFI analysis, the DAs of the various countries, a study of the internet, publications, etc. is carried out, including the earlier contracted cases. Comparative analysis of similar specification of the products in the world is carried out, and a draft SQRs are made which are circulated to a large number of stakeholders like the IDS, DRDO, DDP, Quality Insurance, Department of Standardization, Acquisition Technical. After the comments have been received from them, the SQRs are now sent for approval by the SHQ to the respective Staff Equipment Policy Committee headed by the Deputy Chief CDNS. And this is within 6 months of the response of the RFI. Now, SEPC consults the subject matter experts as required to finalize the QRs. And after the approved QRs or the joint service QRs in case of a tri-service QR, along with the comparative analysis of the specifications received from all the vendors is submitted with a statement of case for seeking the acceptance of necessity. Now, in case other services intend to procure the same equipment in the next 3 years, the lead service will process what is known as a joint SQR through the Integrated Staff Equipment Policy Committee. However, if the other service accepts the SQR or the requirement is 20% or less of the lead service, then there is no requirement of converting the SQR to the JSQR. There are provisions for purposes of amendment. It is post accord of AoN and before issue of RFP, it is more easily feasible. The operational and the technical parameters is only by the AoN according authority. For maintainability and agronomic parameters, it can be by the SEPC or the ISEPC. However, once the RFP has been issued, the amendment can only be by the Defense Acquisition Council and no one else, irrespective of who gave the AoN. SQR, needless to say, are specific, verifiable, and they're based on quality standards like the JS Penta 5 of the DGQA. Each parameter, each degree of difficulty is selected and formulated by the QA agency depending on which terrain condition the equipment is likely to be deployed. In the SQR, there are other things known as essential parameters and enhanced performance parameters. Essential parameter A is part of the equipment that is available in the market. It forms the core of the SQR, and this is tested and validated at the field evaluation trial stage. Now, essential parameter B may not be available presently in the equipment. However, it is felt that it can be developed and achieved by vendors using available technology in the requisite time frame. Now, for EPB, it has to be tested and validated within the specified time frame. It may or may not be tested during the FET stage, but certainly has to be done before the delivery, that is in the first of production model. It should not have an adverse effect on EPA in case it has not been done during field evaluation trials. If EPB is being taken, then additional bank guarantee between 5 to 10% of the contract value is required or as determined by the AoN according authority, and it is specifically mentioned in the RFP. In case there is a failure of the EPB, by the vendor at the FOPM stage, it will result in forfeiture of all bank guarantees and may attract additional penal provisions if required. Now, EPB can therefore be used only with specific approval of the AoN according authority. EPA and EPB are both non-negotiable instruments. Another thing is known as enhanced performance parameters. For this, to give you an example, APFSDS round which is required is 430 mm penetration. However, it is felt that additional points to be given to the vendor who can produce additional penetration of 450 mm. So therefore, the RFP mentions the enhanced performance parameters being evaluated, and they are submitted in the technical bids and tested during FET. A credit score of 10% for evaluation is given to the L1 vendor, which each attribute not exceeding a credit score of 3%. Now, except for L1 determination, that is only lowering the cost of a person who's been able to achieve EEP, it does not result in the change in the commercial code. That means the government will pay you the complete amount. Only your quote shall be reduced for the purposes of comparison with your competitors. If you are unable to meet the enhanced performance parameter, it does not ban you from the case and you shall go in without the enhanced performance parameters though not achieved. Coming to the next step in the procurement cycle, that is acceptance of necessity. This is an important aspect in which the service headquarter concerned goes to approving authority who is authorized to give the acceptance of necessity for the particular project. It includes issues like what categorization should be carried out, what is the quantity, what is the cost estimate, are the indigenous content, should it be lowered or higher, offsets if applicable, waiver to offsets if applicable, what is the development agency in the buy global manufacturer in India, any split supply between L1 and L2, a single vendor case, abinitio, enhanced performance parameters, especially EPB, military material to incentivization as well as TOT. Now, this is obtained within 1 year by the service headquarter post approval of the SQR, the JSQR. The draft statement of case for non-delegated powers is forwarded to DDP, DRDO, acquisition wing and headquarter ideas by the respective service headquarters. The finance managers carry out a quantity vetting as per MOD finance SOPs and headquarter ideas examine interoperability and equipment commonality so that the cases can be combined of all three services. Comments from all agencies concerned are forwarded within 4 weeks to the service headquarter concerned, and thereafter the finalized statement of case is fielded in the Defence Procurement Board by the concerned SHQ. The DPB DAC Secretariat circulates the SOC to all members and invitees. Now, in case the Defence Procurement Board records AoN for cases which are greater than 300 crore and less than equal to 500 crore. The Defence Acquisition Council accords AoN for cases greater than 500 crores. The DPB DSC meet every 2 months and minutes are issued within 2 weeks of meeting. The Service Procurement Board is another thing. These are for delegated powers where cases are less than 300 crores. It meets at least once a month and is circulated to various agencies concerned. Cases where the AoN is less than equal to 100 crore, these are reserved for MSMEs, provided there are at least 2 MSMEs that are eligible. Now, Service Headquarter has to hold internal collegiate for RFP vetting and forward draft RFP to respective ADG Acquisition Technical with a copy of the statement of case for the record of AoN. Now, in case there is a requirement of carrying out extension for getting the AoN post the approval of the SQR, then up to 6 months it is given by the respective CISC of the headquarter ideas, vice chiefs or the DG ICG. Further 6 months can be given by the DG acquisition. Few key points with respect to the AoN. Preference and categorization is to equipment which has got indigenous design, development and manufacture. That is from Indian vendor by Indian IDDM. Time required for procurement and delivery from the foreign sources vis-a-vis the time taken to make it available in India, along with what is the operational necessity is taken into consideration while making the categorization in the AoN. The categorization of the procurement scheme shall be based on decreasing priorities as had already been specified, and the SHQ is to justify in case a lower priority categorization is required. Now, no equipment from the positive list of indigenization can be carried out ex import. Technology which is required to be absorbed by the Indian vendor will be specified in the statement of case. The RFP will seek an indigenization and technology absorption plan based on it. AoN according authority can give higher or lower indigenous content, and for option clause, SHQ, we'll come to the option clause later on, SHQ has to examine viability vis-a-vis fresh procurement. For split sources of supply, approval is to be taken in AoN for the split ratio provided the L2 accepts the price and terms and condition of L1. Additional points. For offsets under Buy Global, the DAC can consider partial or full waiver of the offset clause. However, if an Indian vendor is involved, it does not mean that he does not have to reach indigenous content stipulation. Now, AoN validity, as pointed out, 6 months for buy category and 1 year for buy and make Indian and all turnkey projects. So buy and make Indian has got greater amount of validity for purpose of acceptance of necessity, since it's a longer period, gestation period project. Now this begins from the date of formal issues of minute of meeting of the AoN according authority. Now AoN can lapse for cases where the RFP is not issued during the period of validity and the revalidation fresh AoN is required, as we saw in the last slide. If original RFP is issued within the original AoN and later retracted, in that case what happens is that the AoN remains valid and RFPs can still be issued should there be no change in original decision and categorization. The period should not exceed the original validity period of the AoN. Abinitio single vendor cases can be explored if the product has a qualitative edge. The cases being undertaken under the design and development project or transfer of technology is obtained earlier by the Indian vendor from the foreign vendor. If MOU with the foreign OEM has been signed for co-production or transfer of technology with the prior approval of DAC, and not that later on you go and say that this is required. AoN details is hosted on MOD and SHQ websites within 1 week of the minute of meeting issue. However, it is not applicable for classified cases. Now, though the RFP would be sent for a certain amount of vendors which have already been selected, additional vendors may request for RFP within 4 weeks of this being hosted and will be considered. For buy and make Indian cases, it is known as a PSQR instead of a SQR. Now this can be appended to the statement of case for seeking of AoN. In this case, what happens is the SQR is made after issue of AoN and not appended along with the statement of case for AoN. That means the PSQR is provisional and can be changed. First stage shortlisting of vendors by SHQ is based on the PSQR / the SQR, which is approved by at the AoN stage itself. To recapitulate, there are a total of 11 steps in the procurement process for the buy and make categories. In the first session, we covered the request for information, which is the first stage. In the current session, we have covered the service quality requirements and the acceptance of necessity. In the third session, we shall go on to cover as to what is the solicitation of offer, which is the request for proposal RFP, as well as to how the RFP is evaluated in the technical evaluation committee. It has been a pleasure to bring to you this session of chapter 2, which I consider as a major aspect towards understanding the forthcoming chapters thereafter. I intend to also open a Google blog in which these videos shall be posted, so as to allow access to people who do not have LinkedIn with them and cannot access these videos. Thank you so very much. Please share these videos with the people concerned so that there's maximum dissemination for it. All the best till next time.